am. It is amazing. Okay, we should be good to go. So, welcome to our first stream about the combat skill sets in the Eternal City. Um, the purpose of our conversations here is to kind of expose a little bit of the combat skills and discussions and sort of what they're all about to some of the newer players of the game or people who've just been shy to pick up a weapon. So this isn't really an overall theory crafting, high level, or balanced discussion. It's just about talking about what is already in the game and what it looks like. And joined with me here is Craig. You may know him in the community as a couple different people, but I'll let him introduce himself. So over to you, Craig.
Sure, thank you, Phil. My name is Craig. Characters you might recognize me as would be Thento, Ilkalin, Gaiden, Sagnus, a couple other lesser known ones, but those are probably the primary. In the forums, I mainly go by Ilkalin.
Right, Ilkilin, the thief whose name is hard to type, so you could never get caught. Yeah, that's metagaming 101. Way to go. Excellent. All right. So I guess today, today's pretty easy. We're talking about combat maneuvers, and as I understand it, combat maneuvers was combat maneuvers. It was what was it?
Armed
ACMs.
combat, yeah, armed combat maneuvers. And,
Oh,
and when they brought in like brawling and pancration, they realized, doesn't really make sense to call it that anymore. So there's
okay,
just a brief name change. Yeah.
okay. And was CMs always in the game, or was it just weapon blocks before?
As far as I know, and I've been playing since '99, and it has been in the game since I started playing then. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So like most skill sets, this is generally the basics are easy to learn, right? And on this is just a website off the wiki, folks. So we're really going off what's really accessible here. Lots of people are training you, but a lot of players are training you as well. But pretty much easy to learn. And then we've got what is now? You described this to me as 3 easy dodges, 3 average dodges, and then a lot of utility.
The utility. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about duck.
So duck, really the best way to structure it, if you look at the six attacks, or six dodges rather, it's not just that you have the three easy and three average. They're actually kind of grouped in high, medium, and low. So duck, if you look at duck and sway, they're both going to be your high dodges. If you look at sidestep and basic dodge, they're going to be your mid range dodges. And if you look at leg dodge and jump, they're going to be your low attack dodges. There is some overlap between them, so you'll
Hmm.
often find that sway may dodge some things for mid, or in sidestep may dodge some things for high. But in general, that's how you can kind of get a visual of how they're grouped.
Okay. Okay. Because I guess in terms of attacks, there's also general sort of like thrusting attacks. There's slashing. There's chopping. So there's a sweep style attacks. So there's kind of a couple things that way as well. And
That's,
so these sort of play into those. Is that right?
That's correct, and this for me was a big draw in that the GMs who originally designed the system really tried to make it make sense, and that if you have a stabbing maneuver that aims mid, it doesn't make sense to duck into it, right? That would be the opposite of what you're trying to do for that attack. So they really tried to style these different dodges to align with that to make sense for the attack that you're receiving. So for ducks, those are going to be ducking a lot of like high slashes. You can duck a high stab, but not like a middle stab. Sway is going to be more for like strikes and chops and stuff like that. You can't duck a chop, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yes, so for duck, that's going to be slash, stab, jab, strike, swat. Strike is kind of all over the place. There's a lot of different types of striking maneuvers that land
Mm.
all over. So sway covers a lot of those. Covers chop. If you really were to separate the two, I kind of see duck as a good all rounder, and sway. The two things there are the main things that cover are chops and also utilities. So there's a lot of if you look at a lot of weapons, there's often their big hitter moves, so like the overhead thrust for spears,
Right.
things like that. The moves that do a ton of damage. Sway is usually the one that covers that. And in my opinion, if I were to look at any of the dodge skills and say which one do I just want to concentrate on and take it to infinity, it
Mm-hmm.
would be sway for that reason.
Be
There's so much
sway.
that hits hard high that sway can really help you with.
Yeah, and that's been my experience as well. I'm playing primarily in friendliest these days against those Sinner and Axemen, and their overhead chop is like the one thing you just need to be afraid of all the time. And so The swing dodge, I think, is super clutch. Okay, so back to duck. I mean, let's rate it on terms of importance. Like, how important is it to learn duck? And can we just say of these six, is there like a general rule in terms of how important they are in the game?
I would say there's really only one in my opinion that is not that important out of all six of them, and that is jump. The others are almost always they're going to be covering a necessary gap in your defense. So
Mm-hmm.
if you were to say try to choose only three out of six, you would still be leaving some massive openings
Mm.
for whichever three that you chose. So unfortunately, you can't just say, hey, I'm only going to train this one or this one or two or three. You've really got to cover all five. I'd say the one that you could put the most would be sway, and the one that you could put the least would be jump.
Okay, all right. So maybe we'll circle back to maybe why jump is less important a bit later on. So let's talk about combat guarding. So what is combat guarding? When is it useful? What are some sort of funny, neat things or stories about combat guarding?
I mean, combat guarding, I'm pretty sure most people remember the days of lantern thieves. You'd be hunting in the alleys, and someone comes by, realizes that if they grab your lantern and run off with it, that, well, now you no longer have a light source. So even if they catch up to you and they try to attack you, they're not going to be able to hit you because you just, extinguish the lantern and stuff like that. So combat guarding is, of course, by nature designed to keep your stuff yours. So if something's on the ground, you can guard that item, and it's also extendable to other players. So you can
Mm-hmm.
stop you can stop someone from, say, approaching another player to attack them,
Mm-hmm.
and which becomes a utility for pole arms, and that pole arms can sometimes negate that by attacking from afar.
Right. Okay. So that's interesting. Another thing that I've been noticing in the game world more and more is so we may know, or you may not know, if you're watching this video, that only three people can be approached to you in melee combat. Um, and if there is no one who has a ranged attack as your opponent, then your allies can approach you to protect you as well as combat guarding, which is sort of a way to do it without the skill set, unless of course someone else has a ranged attack, because then you would just be opening yourself up to that. But combat guarding, very cool. 1 to 5, how important? How far should you take it? Because it can be taught up to 125.
In my experience, the vast majority of my combat characters never needed it past about 20 or 30.
Okay.
Just one rank in it is usually enough, depending on your stats, to give a good defense for if you're trying to, say, stop someone from grabbing your lantern.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're trying to, say, guard a direction and prevent people from going through, you're going to be competing against their stats as well. And so, for that purpose, if let's say you're someone who wants to do hits on people and you want to go and attack someone and ensure that they can't get away, you might want to have combat guarding either at 50 or all the way to 125 just to help give you that extra bonus to ensure that they're going to stay put.
That's crazy. Well, I never considered the idea of training it past 20, so that's definitely something neat. But you did mention you can guard a direction. So maybe let's talk about you can guard lanterns. All right. I talked a little bit about how you can guard people, you can guard directions. So would that mean like south or like guard archway? Is there anything else you can guard? Is anything else kind of like
Uh,
that's
and
important?
even just doors, like you can close a door and then guard it, and that way they can't go. Even if they succeed to get past your guard, they first got to open the door, and then they've got to get through the door as well the second time. So they've got to make two
Oh,
checks on a
okay.
closed item. Yep, and that also gives you the chance. As soon as they succeed on the first, you can close the door right back,
Close the door
and
right
now.
back.
Yep, and now they've got to do more checks on that. So that's a very effective way for PvP if you're trying to hunt someone, or just even say you're preventing a thief from leaving. Someone stole from you,
Mm.
and you can close the door and keep it guarded until a constable gets there to help
Kind of,
out.
yeah, or keep that intimidating conversation happening in a room. Okay, right on. Battle cry, everyone's favorite skill. Everyone learns this. 5 out of 5 importance. Used before every strike. Am I correct? True or false?
I would say to most newbies who don't really know what they're doing, true, because I certainly did the same when I started out. But in reality, no. This is unfortunately a skill that is completely underutilized because it just doesn't really do anything right now. So you do get a bonus to attack, but like you said, you have to sacrifice an attack in order to get a very minimal bonus to your next attack from it. And so it comes out not to be worth it. You're going to be better off doing another attack anyways, maybe
Okay.
even something that can sweep your opponent or something like that. In reality, the only time I can see someone using Battle Cry is if they're in a clutch situation, say in PvP, PvP,
Mm-hmm.
and they know if they don't land this big attack next, this next attack in their rotation right now, then
Mm-hmm.
they're probably going to lose the match. I have done battle cries at that moment to say, ensure I can get an ankle hook or ensure I can get a weapon hook,
Okay. Okay.
and give that little bit of leverage. So it does have its very brief moments of utility, but I would say I would like to see work done on it to change to improve it.
So my takeaway from that is that you may need sort of an in-depth or a next level understanding of the rhythm and flow of combat, what it is that you critically need to land before this really becomes something that's going to really pay off for you in the end.
Correct. Especially for a new character, you're almost never going to be using it to any sort of real effect.
Okay, okay. And now if we're going to take this, if for instance I am that good, I want to take it up to a certain level of rank, like is there a drop off? Is there a diminishing return? Do you know?
I do not know that one actually.
Yeah,
That's one of the things is because of that low utility.
right.
I doubt most characters have ever taken it past rank one,
Fair enough.
maybe rank 10 at the most. Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, so Killing Blow. I mean, this is definitely first of all, this generates SP for combat maneuvers, which is great.
Yep.
Um, but it also prevents you from losing fatigue by just wailing on it on an unconscious body for a while. So absolutely
And
fantastic, necessary.
it is. It's very necessary for even newer characters. The benefits that new characters have these days that they did in the past is that certain mobs, such as those on the island, and even certain rats in the sewers, will automatically die as soon as they reach zero health points. So there is no waiting from unconscious to wait till it dies. They actually die pretty soon off these days, and that's in a lot of newbie hunting grounds that happens. The notoriousness here is that killing blow used to be required everywhere, and so yes, even on the island, you would knock unconscious a gull, and if you haven't gotten enough SP to learn Killing Blow yet, you've got to hit that guy 10, 15 more times until it passes away,
Yeah,
and that's wasting fatigue. So Killing Blow,
right.
it was very notorious, and in fact, they've actually improved it. I think it was a couple years ago. They made it even easier to land, to where you're pretty much assured to get Killing Blow on the first strike now.
Okay. So then in terms of the amount of ranks you need, because again we see that this guy Hroth teaches to 125. Are we taking an average skill to 125 to do this effectively?
Absolutely not. I literally on all of my characters have kept killing blow at rank one, and as because the logic there being is that I'm going to bring combat maneuvers basics to 90 anyways,
Hmm.
so it's going to get a pretty big bonus. That combined with your perception plus your dexterity will usually be enough to ensure that you get a 5 success for killing blow. I think I have had one character in the past that just had abysmal stats, and I had to rank it up to about rank 10 to make sure I could land it.
Okay, okay. Well, that's good to hear because certainly I've never taken past rank one myself. Just making sure you don't know something I don't know. So that's great. Okay. Um, simple rolling rise, and let's just kind of loop them together. Simple and backwards rolling rise. Is this maybe the reason why jump is less necessary because of these two?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Yes, because there's so much utility from the rises that it not only does it negate the effect of someone say doing a sweep, but it actually prevents people from even trying the sweep in the first place. You see a lot of people just don't even try sweeping attacks because they know your rise is probably going to catch it anyways. At least when you get to the more the later levels of veteran combat and PvP.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so the rises, yes, they counteract that. Now the rises were changed not too long ago, I think in the past couple of years, to where you no longer can have a close to 100% success rate, at least when it comes to PvP. So PvE, the success rate can still be very high, or even I believe it is 100% once you get it to a certain level.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but versus players, and forgive me, I didn't write them down, but I believe
Mm-hmm.
the player rate is like I think it's 15% is the maximum that you can have Rise be successful at. And so that might affect my kind of assessment of jump now. The fact that players will know that it's no longer 100%, it's just a very low 15% rate.
Mm-hmm.
It's either 15 or 25%. I can't remember which. But it's generally low. So knowing that might actually improve the utility of jump now.
Okay, okay, great. So maybe to kind of reiterate a little bit of what you're saying is essentially these rises, if you get swept and where they can get triggered, because there are some skills where jump is useful because you want to block that attack or you want to not get hit because they don't trigger a rise. But for these things, it means that you will get up instead of being knocked prone, and then you go. And so in PvE, we would say that this skill is maybe perfectible at a certain rank. But in PvP, there's regardless, even if you go to the same PvE sort of perfect rank, you'll always have a 15% chance of them keeping you prone. So you have an 85% chance of staying up. Is that correct?
Correct. And there's some other utility with this as well. There's certain moves that say will leave you kneeling, such as like leaping cross strike for Nelsor. I think Cestus has one as well. I'm not sure if
Mm-hmm.
you can. I'm pretty sure you can rise from that one as well. So there's a lot of moves that say at the end of your move you would end up kneeling or prone. The rises will have you auto rise after them as well. So very effective. Um, and uh, and I want to say there's also sometimes a chance for you to leave an opening even after a rise.
Okay.
And I believe the higher rank that you go with the rise reduces the chance of an opening and it reduces the depth of that opening. So if you ever notice, hey, you've left a vast opening versus you left a small opening, increasing your ranks can reduce your chances of, say, leaving a vast opening where all your
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
defenses are gone.
Being the particular sword user that I am in the game world right now, I'm very familiar with openings. Okay, so that's cool. So let's talk about maybe the difference between the two different rises. So what makes simple rolling rise? Why is it difficult versus impossible?
Gotcha. It's mainly because simple rolling rise isn't going to retreat you at the same times. The whole point of backwards rolling rise is that it auto retreats you. I think the concept there is that basically if you're a pole arm, you generally want to choose backwards, and if you're a close range combatant, you want to go with simple. I think that was the initial
Mm-hmm.
separation between the two, but it won't always be true for your character. And in fact, you can learn both and change which one you want to use depending on the utility. So
Mm-hmm.
for two-handed axes, this was very common. Where sometimes I'm finding, say, a kniver, and so maybe they have an advantage up close versus me. I would want to use backwards rolling rise to get some quick long range attacks off
Right.
whenever it triggered or something like that, right? Now, granted, versus a knifer, it might not come up very often. They're not going to be sweeping me with their knife, but you kind of get the idea. Like
If it's a two
club
on
would be a good
one,
example.
then for sure.
Yes,
Yeah.
especially. Yes, exactly. So backwards rolling rise helps to make sure that you're retreating. Now, if you're, let's say you are a kniver, you might want to go with simple because you're going to want to stay approach to your person all the time.
Okay.
Backwards can end up retreating you from somebody, and especially if you're in a two-on-one situation and that person's being guarded, backwards rolling rise would now put you away from a target that may be guarded, and now you can't attack them anymore.
Oh, fair enough. Okay. And for those of you who don't know out there, so the way that you would sort of choose which rise you would pick, you would type in game toggle hyphen rise. Um, and so in this case, you can use one or the other, and it'll tell you which one you sort of got queued up. So that's toggle hyphen rise to toggle whichever one you're using. All right. Now we talked a little bit. I mentioned the word perfect. So what is sort of PVE, player versus environment, so you against mobs and not players. What is the sort of the perfect rank for these?
Think that the perfect rank to aim for most characters is going to be about 120 ranks. I think that the actual flat number is around 100, but the number that you need to actually get to perfect ranks with PvE is going to be affected by your load. So the more weight that you're carrying,
Mm,
and I haven't really tested where the drop offs are and stuff like that. It seems to be fairly scalar. So you're gonna rise more successfully more often carrying 10 pounds as compared to carrying 80 pounds, and that's regardless of what the word level is saying on whether or not you're carrying a heavy load versus a moderate load. It seems to be very scalar with the actual raw number that you have, and so simply going from 80 pounds to 90 pounds, even if it's the same word level, will affect how often you rise or how often you don't rise.
gotcha. So drop that sack, guard it, and then get in some fighting.
Yes, exactly. That will hugely affect, especially if you ever go to the Traven. Making sure your weight encumbrance is low will help you a ton in ensuring that you
Mm-hmm.
rise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely had a character die to an archer stun, a sweep, an impale, and then just 20 spears. Um,
Yes. Yes.
doing the work, and the character didn't last very long after that. Okay. Um, so rolling dodge. I mean, in my experience, probably the least used or least learned dodge in the game.
And I actually love this opportunity to actually speak towards rolling dodge, and that more recently, I'm not sure if this was a change at some point, but I've actually learned the utility of rolling dodge really combined with the rises. The fact that the rises are not perfectible, you'll find that what happens is in hunting situations like the Travent, where you've got 15 spearmen trying to sweep you over and over, eventually one of them is going to hit a 95 100.
Hmm.
And out of those, eventually one of those is going to possibly trigger a failure and rise, and so you're going to end up on the ground with 15 NPCs, and they're all attacking you. And rolling dodge, I can't tell you how much that can save your butt when you're in that situation.
Right.
And you get swept, you go normal or wary. And I mean, just with only I think I had like 20 ranks in rolling dodge, but I think I was like 90 for dodges. I was rolling dodge every single attack from the
Hmm.
NPCs. So it's actually very very effective these days, especially when it comes to the Traven. And I would even not underestimate it when it comes to PvP capability. If you got it up to rank 90, it would actually really help you out in situations, say on the sands, if you get knocked down or prone. It would really help ensure that you don't get hit. One thing about rolling dodge, and to be honest here, I haven't been able to test this, but I know that the general lore here is that rolling dodge will give you a bonus back from your normal defenses based upon the rank bonus of that defense. So let's say you had 100 points in a dodge or a duck or whatever,
Okay.
and someone goes against your rolling dodge. I used to think that rolling dodge was its own skill, so you just simply rolled against their
Okay.
attack. Yeah, but I've heard from others that it's actually percentage based on your ranks giving back. So it's very similar to like archery, right?
I
Where
was gonna say, so that sounds a lot like what missile awareness may be like.
yeah, yeah, and so I to be honest here, so again, I want to make sure I'm not throwing out false information. So I'd love
Hmm.
for some people to test that. But because I always thought rolling dodge was its own move. You had someone trigger against your rank bonus against that, and it was a flat. They're attacking versus your rolling dodge while you're on the ground. But I've had other people say more and more often that no, it's actually just you don't see the dodge you're using.
Hmm.
It just gives you a percentage rank bonus out of that dodge that would have been triggered anyways if you were standing.
So that is fascinating information because it's definitely something I haven't heard of before, and if I haven't heard of, then I dare say likely others haven't either.
Gotcha.
That's really great. Oh, I'm sorry.
And I've really only I've heard that in some random. I think it was in the
Mm,
the Discord chats and stuff like that. And agree. I was like, I've never heard that before, but it was insisted upon by a couple people. So I didn't want to be false
right.
there in providing that.
So we hope that jump makes it so you don't get swept. If we take the example of the Traven to the nth degree, you jump, you don't get swept. If you do get swept, then you use one of these rises to save you from that. If that doesn't work, then you've got rolling dodge as your third layer, all within the same skill set. Uh, and then hopefully you're able to sort of rise up and just keep on taking names. I wanted to touch back on backwards rolling rise actually because I forgot and again this may be because we don't read the wikis or we don't test this all the time. But when you successfully do a backwards rolling dodge, do you or do you not get a bonus to your next attack?
Yes, you do get a bonus to your next attack. And this was huge. This really led into what I was talking about earlier with getting those long range attacks off. I would often actually wait for a backwards rolling rise trigger where I knew either the player I was fighting or the NPC I was fighting would try to sweep me. I would wait for that hit to come along to where I would trigger it, and now I knew I have a big bonus to my next big attack. So I go through my rotation, get off some smaller attacks I know don't do a lot of damage,
Mm-hmm.
wait for my big attack, then they sweep me, and now I have a perfect timing attack to where I have a big bonus to that hit that I really need to land.
Okay, that's fantastic news. Absolutely, because if you knew you've got something that's harder to hit, but that's going to give you the utility to sweep the match, or it's going to give you the ability to kind of bring that damage so that it makes life harder for them. Because we know unless you have a specific trait, the more damage you take, the harder combat's going to be for you going forward. These bonuses are really key in sort of keeping up. So definitely, if you're new, it's kind of something to keep in the back of your mind. Uh, for those veteran players, it's something that we kind of see automatically, but something to keep in mind.
A similar thing we might have missed for combat guarding I wanted to throw in real quick is that if you are guarding somebody else and someone tries to approach that person and you succeed in guarding them, that person will actually now be approached to you. So you will actually have someone against you now. A question that comes out of that is, let's say you're guarding someone and three people approach, you successfully guard all three, you now have three people against you, and person four tries to approach. what will happen? Will they have a higher chance to get by? Will you
Hmm.
suddenly have more people approach to you? Do they just stay far away? That's one thing I haven't had a chance to actually test out
Interesting, interesting. Well, I hope to never, find out the answer to that question the hard way,
yet.
but
Exactly. I mean, I've never been in that situation, so I haven't had
yeah.
to.
But you know what? I mean, I think that we may be giving people some ideas once they see the video. So I'm looking to see what comes out of this, and certainly there'll be room in the comments below. Um, okay, so fallback. I gotta say, I mean, fallback versus retreating is pretty much useful 95% of the time.
Yes.
And it absolutely key. Let's talk about what it does, how it can fail, how it's great, and maybe to what rank you might need to bring it to.
So first off, the utility here is ensuring that when you normally retreat, you're going to leave openings, and those openings can be fairly random. It's usually going to be everything. You're leaving everything open, and all your defenses go away, is what that usually means. When you're retreating, you'll also see those words that I mentioned earlier, such as you leave a vast opening, a large opening, a moderate opening, a small opening, and this is basically identifying how much of your rank bonus is gone. So a small opening is going to take away less of your defensive rank bonus compared to a vast opening, which is almost all of your rank bonus, if not all of it. So fallback allows you to not only negate loss in rank bonus, but it also allows you to immediately retreat. Retreating, as you know, takes several seconds to actually pull you away from the character, whereas fallback immediately gets you there. You have almost no round time. I think it's like middle of something round time to where you're immediately retreated.
Hmm.
So that saves two steps. You can't be attacked during that time because it's immediate, and you're not going to leave an opening. Now, if it fails, if you roll under your success, then yes, fallback will not only fail to retreat you, it will also leave an opening for the opponent to attack. So it's kind of a risk versus reward situation. Another thing where it's risk versus reward is that a retreat command can allow you to retreat to a direction. So you can say retreat east, retreat west, and you're assured as long as you successfully retreat, you're going to move in that direction and move away from your target as well. This is very important when it comes to running away because fallback, you cannot use that fallback east or fallback west. So a lot of times you kind of have to go, okay, do I fall back and then try to move west, or do I retreat west and ensure that I'm going to get away, but risk leaving an opening that they can hit me on? And this is very important with NPCs because, as you'll find in Friendliest, as soon as you say hit fallback, you may find they're already on top of you. And I've been in situations where I fall back 100 times, never get away. And if you're a new player, you may get stuck there and knocked out. And so knowing that you at least have the option to try to retreat west can be there. But again, friendliest NPCs, they also auto target. So if you
Hmm.
retreat and you leave an opening, say an opening low, there's a very high chance they're going to be sweeping you or knocking you down if you leave a low opening. So it's
Yeah.
very difficult situation sometimes.
Going for those high stuns. If you're dealing with a certain auxiliary, he might go for a strike and smash and knock you down anyway, which also stuns you, which is punishing. Okay.
Exactly.
Now fallback, however, you can't do if you've got no fatigue, right? So if you've got no energy left, you're stuck with your retreat direction.
Yeah, so you actually can do, but it's a 95 success.
Okay.
So just like anything else, you can actually get it to the point to where, even if you have a fatigue deficit, you get that fatigue penalty to it. If you had 500 ranks in fallback, you could actually still have a non-95 success for it.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. So,
Sure, many people kind of take it to that level, but it does exist.
I think on my current character, I'm just gonna alt tab here and kind of look at where I have it. I've got 5 ranks in it right now, and it's been for the purposes of what I'm using it for, absolutely fine. I mean, I've got it at 5 ranks. What do you think? Where do you kind of leave it at?
So personally, now I've learned so, and I'll explain what my logic here in a minute. But personally, I would never have fallback less than about 30 ranks. And if I'm a real PvP character, or even especially in friendliest character, I'm probably going to have it at 50. And the reason for that is that a lot of times the reason why you need to use fallback is to get away quickly, and you're in a defensive situation. And fallback gets its natural rank bonus. As an aggressive move. So if you know anything about the rank bonuses, when you're aggressive, your attacks are going to get the higher rank bonus, and if you're say wary or defensive, your defensive skills are going to get the higher rank bonuses. So let's say you're defensive. If you're defensive, your fallback gets zero rank bonus towards it, and you're going to fail it almost every time. In wary, you're again going to have a heavy penalty, and so it's going to be much harder to successfully fall back. Whereas if you have 50 ranks in fallback compared to 5, you're going to have a much easier chance in wary to fall back successfully. And this is really important because otherwise, the only way to ensure that fallback is going to succeed is to move to an aggressive stance, get that higher rank bonus, and then fall back. But you're going to have lesser defenses. You're going to be
Mm-hmm.
more
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable in that situation. So that's why I usually say 30 is usually kind of a minimum investment. It doesn't take that long to drop 30 lessons into fallback, and just ensure that whether you're normal or wary, you're going to succeed to fall back regardless.
Okay, so definitely my takeaway is I'm doing it wrong. Thanks for that. That's good. No, but it's good. So excellent because I actually didn't know that you could take it once you're past fatigue to a lower than 95. So thank you for that insight, Craig. I really appreciate that. Um,
And that's true with a lot of moves. You'll find that people, if you've ever heard of like min gaining and stuff like that, a lot of times what they've done is they take their fastest move, and regardless of the repeat penalty, regardless of the fatigue penalty, they've gotten the rank bonus on it so high that they still have a 5 success regardless of either one of those, and they just keep spamming it until negative 50% fatigue. So yeah.
that's great. Yeah, definitely not something that I would do in the areas I frequent, but that is fantastic. All right, recovery. Why is recovery important? What is recovery? How far are we taking it? And any funny stories? What do you think?
Gotcha. So recovery is or if you don't know, recovery is for the purpose of not fumbling your weapon. So, and this is especially important with weapons like cesti and whips, where you can possibly cut yourself and cause a bleeder, if you were to fail. So, recovery by nature is just making sure that when you fumble, you don't drop the weapon on the ground, you keep it in your hands. There's multiple situations where this is important. The first being in that if you have a weapon and you need to block with it, if you fumbled it on the ground, you are now no longer
Can't
blocking.
block.
You're,
Can't block the
yeah,
weapon you can't hold.
exactly. You're dropping a layer of defense for those couple of seconds. It's not just the pain point of having to type get weapon, but you're losing defense in that moment. So recovery is very important from that standpoint. But also recovery also offers a bonus to your attack if you to your next attack if you successfully recover. Now, I will admit they actually changed this within the past year. I do not know what the new rules are for it. In the past, recovery when you failed to, it had a secondary attempt to attack, and you knew that you got a small bonus if you didn't try to attack, if it didn't try to auto reattack, and you got a bigger bonus if it did try to auto reattack.
Hmm.
Um, and so, and also your ranks in recovery would also affect the bonus that you got. So I haven't done testing there. I don't know what those numbers are for how much you exactly have, but it's pretty significant. I believe that the standard bonus was around, I think, plus 20 or so, and the larger bonus was like plus 30, and I could be a little bit off there, but it
Well,
was significant enough to where you would notice it in PvP.
and I actually have to speak to that because a character of mine, his sort of gimmick was surrounding Spear and Pale, and constantly I would watch for the recovery, and if the recovery hit and I didn't reattack, or if I fumbled, I had it at rank 100, so I turned it all the way up to 100. I could get a plus 50 on a knee break. I could get
Gotcha.
a plus 50 on a sweep. So I could do a lot of things like that, and I would really, really watch for that. It was actually one of my favorite moments was when I would fumble my weapon, because I knew whatever I queued up next might change sort of the course of combat for me. And this is something that sort of new players, you guys can try yourself if you do take recovery past 50 in PvE, because it happens all the time. It happens more than we would like. Sometimes you don't want to be fumbling, you just want the attack to go through, but most definitely it's one of those things.
I think it's actually more like 3% of your attacks rather than 1% like you would think. It's not just a 1 out of 100. I'm pretty sure it's about 3% of your attacks fumble. It's yeah, like you said, it's more often than you would think it would
Hmm.
be that it happens.
Yeah.
And like you said, that bonus can scale up there. So you get 100 ranks in recovery, a plus 50 bonus is a very nice thing to have. Do you know if that's still the case? Did that get affected in the recent changes to it?
I don't. I don't. It's worth investigation, and maybe someone can comment below. But most definitely, I still think that there is a lot of uh, there's a lot of value in taking recovery beyond 50. Now my character stopped fumbling at 30, but she has 240 dexterity, so she's like great stats. So maybe you don't need it all the way to 50 to stop fumbling, as maybe the wiki may say. However, like I said, there's value in taking this all the way. That's my opinion.
and we'll get to the stat skills, I guess, later. But if you're using, say, stat skills for your dexterity, in general, you'll need recovery around 50. And like you said, if you have a high natural dexterity, though, you decided to push it more towards 40, 30, or even I think one of my characters is as low as 20, and I still haven't seen a fumble,
That's great news.
only having 20 recovery.
Right
Yeah.
on. So I know that feint and missile awareness are quite different from each other. So let's talk about missile awareness.
Okay, so missile awareness is one that I know this one does work exactly as I had described for rolling dodge. So I'm still kind of dubious on whether or not rolling dodge actually operates but this way.
Hmm.
But it does basically give you your defense is affected against the attacks from an archer based on your normal rank bonuses for the dodges against their attacks. So missile awareness, say at 50, would only give you half the rank bonus that you would have against that attack compared to if you had 90 missile awareness. And
Okay.
so, but also 90 missile awareness with a rank one dodge is not going to do much either. So you have to have the basic defenses and you have to have your missile awareness up to actually give you the full rank bonus of those defenses in order to defend against an archer.
Okay. So this is definitely useless on its own, but coupled with what you're already learning anyway is really going to sort of make the mile between whether you're going to get hit by that arrow or whether you'll be able to block it or get out of the way or what have you.
Right. And just because of the natural, I guess, the meta of the game these days, that a lot of archers end up being the ones that are bandits, or for the vast majority, if you're going to be bandited, you're likely going to have an archer involved in it. That's the reason behind getting missile awareness in the first place. There aren't many NPCs that use it. I think there's only like a couple archers in the game that are NPCs, and even then, the only one that can really hurt you often is going to be the tower archer that you can't dodge anyways. So
Mm. Sort of that
I
emote attack instead of that regular attack, yeah.
exactly. It's just an emoted attack that hits you no matter what. So
So for new players, missile awareness 1 to 5, what's its importance?
new players, I'd say a zero. I would say until you get more familiar for why you're going to need missile awareness, there's no reason to even train it.
Right on.
I'd say once you start getting out of the initial training areas and start exploring areas like the Travent, at that point, then yes, I would look at moving it towards 10, 20, 30.
Hmm.
50 is probably going to be the highest that you need it until you say become a legionary and you're hunting bandits.
Hmm.
Then you're going to need to take it all the way and ensure that because you're going to be in situations where you're fighting against highly skilled archers. So at that point, you need the full bonus out of it.
Right on. Okay. So how is that different from feint awareness then? So what does feint awareness do? Where are we taking that one? Um, and
So
for new players, what does that mean?
is going to be mainly useful for. I mean, the whole point of it is basically ensuring that another player can't use a feint and successfully negate your defenses. So you have to understand how feints work in order to understand the importance of feint awareness. So if someone feints you and they're trying to basically say, hey, your 120 rank bonus is now 0 or is now 20 based on their success of feinting you, and feint awareness just makes it harder for them to succeed. So it's a direct defensive move that goes against the feint itself. So the higher your feint awareness, the harder it is for them to actually feint you. I don't know, however, whether or not it also affects the success uh, efficacy. So whether or not that if you get a vast opening or a small opening, I believe feint
Mm,
awareness affects that as well. But I have not done the testing to know that. Say, hey, at 50 feint awareness, you're always going to have a moderate opening in it, and at 90 feint awareness, you're always going to have a small opening. I would imagine that's something that needs to be tested, but and I imagine it works that way, but I have not tested it specifically.
okay. So then I guess we can also talk about the conditions in which getting feinted are easier or harder. Because it's been my experience that if I'm in defensive, I would think that I am an absolute turtle, nothing can hit me, I'm good to go. Except lo and behold, here comes a feint, and he feints me like it is the easiest thing, like his life depends on it. It's a 5.
It's pretty much the complete reverse, where the more defensive you are, the easier it is to feint you, of course, and the more berserk you are, the harder it is to feint you. Because if you're berserk, there's no defenses to get around. So
Hmm.
literally, feint. The whole point of feint is to get around the turtling. If someone's turtling, you can feint, and so feint awareness is just trying to ensure that if you need to turtle ever, that they can't just open up your defenses. So, but also I've seen people feint it in normal, to where just hey, you
Hmm.
want to ensure that instead of getting an 80 success, you have a 5 success, and so the point of training opening up Feint at that point is to try to get past even those few defenses.
Mhm.
And Feint Awareness is going to, if you just have 50 Feint Awareness, I'd say that's a good moderate point for fighting most NPCs that would use Feint.
Mhm.
So if you're like fighting against a gladiator in the sands or in Franlius, 50 awareness is usually good enough. But of course, I think it was Tail that was going around making sure that everything needed to be brought to 90. So I think that missile awareness and Feint
Mm.
awareness were both brought to, hey, you need to get to 90 to get the full effectiveness of this.
Mm.
So
Okay.
as far as I know, 90 is the max that you need to bring either missile or Feint awareness to.
Okay. And now, where we talked about how the rises are perfectible, in air quotes, there is feint awareness perfectible. Like, is there such a place where you will be unable to be fainted?
I don't believe so. I believe that, and again, it's something that I don't want to say 100% not unless you tested it. But in all the situations that I've seen, even with 90 feint awareness, extremely good dodges and everything else, if you are defensive in a defensive stance and the other person has a good rank bonus, there's a very good chance they're going to be able to feint you in defensive.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, and that's been my experience as well. I have never seen a scenario wherein you cannot be fainted. I mean, ultimately, a feint works as it has a rank bonus, it has a certain attack, it has a certain success to land, and that gets tested by your defenses. Um, and so in this case, it's just like any other attack, and feint awareness helps sort of mitigate that. You certainly don't want to leave this open as you go on through the game, but I would say if you are relatively new to the game, things aren't going to feint you for a while. So maybe where with missile awareness you put at 0, I mean, I would argue a 1 or a 0 is appropriate for this as well.
Yeah, and the thing there is that when you kind of metaing this a little bit is that a lot of characters do that. A lot of characters not only leave feint awareness low, but they also leave feint low. You'll find that very often you don't need feints, or if you're just doing PvE,
Mm-hmm.
you can just get away with your normal attacking unless you're working in like the docks and friendliest or something. And so knowing that everyone has a 10 rank feint, you also know that you probably only need a 10 rank feint awareness. And so, but the ones who really take feint to like rank 90, rank 100, you'll find very quickly that 10 ranks in feint awareness isn't going to do anything against them.
Fair enough. Okay. So footwork and reflexes, right? So they are the second and third impossible in terms of difficulty move within the combat maneuver skill set. And you may find that you may need them, you may not. So it's important to sort of talk about what they are, what they do, what rank you want them at, and just kind of really dive into that.
Gotcha, sure. So footwork and reflexes are part of the stat skill setup. This was something that was introduced about I want to say it was almost 10 years ago now that they put those in. And the idea was that there was a major gap between the abilities of people without natural stats to effectively hold their own in combat against people with high stats. And so the point of this was to basically allow you to use a skill to get you maybe not all the way there. It won't get you to the highest end of stats, but it'll make up for the majority of it and at least get you close enough to be to where you can compete, right? To where you can have a chance to fight. So if you know the stat system of bringing you to 200 being the normal cap, and that if you don't have a trait to modify the trait cap, you'll be capped out at 200 points. The stat skills when you get them to rank 90 will allow you to be the equivalent of, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure it's like 172 or 173. It's like a weird number like that. It's not
Mm-hmm.
quite 175. It's just below that. Um, and uh, and uh, and so that allows you to get super super close to the 200 but not quite all the way there.
Gotcha. Okay, and we can certainly talk about um, what stats do in a later video, but briefly, footwork impacts your agility, which is
Ability,
essentially your
correct.
primary stat that's checked for your natural dodges, right? So your agility and your duck may factor in terms of getting blocking something, and then your reflexes is your speed. So how fast you attack, but also has a defensive component, if I'm correct. So it has about half as
Correct.
much quality in terms of determining how helpful it is in terms of you dodging or blocking an attack.
The interesting difference here with footwork compared to say the other defenses is that the defensive bonus you get from footwork stays the same regardless of your stance. So once you train footwork all the way to rank 90 and you've gotten that basic difference in stand and bonus to your natural defenses. If you're berserk, you still get that massive bonus to your automatic defense. It's going to be that much harder for them to hit you regardless. That's very important, and I'd say a lot of people underestimate the importance of footwork early on, and a lot of people have difficulty, say, in the ludus early on because they didn't put those ranks into footwork early on, and they don't have that natural bonus, and they're having to make that trade off between, well, do I go aggressive and berserk and lose all my defenses and get hit a ton in order to hit the slaves? Well, if you got a high footwork, you can sit aggressive or berserk all day, and it's still really hard for those slaves to hit you. So I'd say even for a newbie, keeping your footwork high is very important. It gives you that defense that you just wouldn't have otherwise in berserk.
Gotcha. Well, that's actually super interesting because despite the fact that it's an impossible skill, you mentioned, the number 90. So 90 is essentially the rank, the number you want to go for. Is that correct?
That's correct. And the reason being is that it gives you that scalar bonus on getting you to that 172 range. Again, I forget if it's 172 or 173,
Mm-hmm.
something around there. It basically, when you're at 90, you're at that top number, that 172 or 173. When you're not at 90, you're at whatever your natural number is. So let's say your natural agility is average, that's 100. So it's going to be scalar. As you go through and you get these ranks, you are going to move yourself towards that 170. Now, the first rank you get, and I haven't had a character where I've needed this because I've never had below average agility, but I'm told that when you get the first rank in any of these stat skills, that it basically equivalent, it brings you to average automatically. So if you have 50 agility and you get a rank 1 in footwork, you automatically become equivalent to rank to stat level of 100 in that stat.
Yeah, that's
um,
a 50%. That's a 50 stat jump. That is a 100% increase in terms of the agility bonus to your defenses, which is great.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. And then from there, it then scales to where you slowly get the remaining 70 so points over those 90 ranks. And
gotcha.
so it may seem like a lot of ranks to put into, but in my opinion, I would say getting it to around 30 or 40 early on, while you're in the Ludus, can be just enough to give you that bump. Really, by the time you get to the third tier of the Ludus, that's a perfect chance to finish out getting the full 90. It's not going to eat up that much of your 750 ranks that you can
Mm-hmm.
that you're limited in the Ludus. And like I said, it really allows you to sit berserk or aggressive, and as long as you have like a good piece of armor on, you're pretty solid. You're not going to be just knocked out all the time, and have a difficult time training. As long as you have that footwork up.
All right, so it sounds
Um,
like you're a fan of footwork. So are we
yes.
saying 1 to 5 for newbies? Where are you putting this?
Five being high, I would say four. I would say that your basic dodges are going to be probably your first priority. You're getting them to say rank 10. Getting your basic combat maneuvers up to like 30 or so would be effective. More effective for like you're saying in normal or aggressive. But not too long after, you're going to be wanting to grab footwork, and so that's why I put it at a four, not a five.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Okay. And reflexes.
Reflexes is affecting the speed stat, and I will say that reflexes, speed in general, is probably one of the areas that I'm least, I wouldn't say least knowledgeable on, but there's a lot of other people that probably know it better than I do. I don't know where the drop offs are for different weapons. Each weapon and each attack, for that matter, has a different stat level. So a different at 120, 130, 140, they have a different point at which that weapon drops in its around time. So you may find that going from rank 45 in reflexes to rank 50 will drop your bash by 1 second, but it didn't drop your stab or your jab. And this is something that I know has changed a lot over time. I think the having each skill have its own round time was something that changed in mass a few years ago. And yeah, it's kind of true all over the board. But in general, for newbies, the best way to think about it is when you get that first level in reflexes, you're going to be ensuring that you're not penalized. So you're bringing yourself to that average speed bonus. You're going to ensure that you have some sort of bonus from that first rank. Usually, almost always, you're going to have some sort of bonus from the first rank. From there, you usually will see your second improvement around either rank 30 or rank 50, depending on your on how slow you are and what weapon you're using. And then by rank 90, you're ensuring that all of your moves are the fastest they can be without dumping lots of points into stat skills. So just getting to rank 90 ensures that you are getting your training faster, ensures that you can respond faster to incoming attacks and defend against them or react against them. So reflexes is again another 4 out of 5. I would almost put it at 5 out of 5. Personally, I do, because just for me, I'm a power trainer. I like to get things done as fast as possible. So, I actually put in the reflexes before I do footwork, because I want to get those SP in faster. But that's just me. If you're taking it easier in the game, that's probably going to drop your importance for that to a 3 or a 4.
And I agree with everything you said, absolutely. And I just kind of want to touch on a little bit of what we talked about round time, just really briefly. If I'm going to go ahead and do a sword chop, for instance, at a low speed, that chop may be 4 seconds right before I do something else. If I'm bringing that speed up and I get that first rank, that may be a 2 second or 3 second chop, right, depending on the weapon or the other variables. But the higher your speed, the faster that chop's going to be. And I know it's different tiers for different weapons and different attacks, but essentially, when we talk about round time and we talk about how reflexes can affect that, we're talking about essentially shaving a full second off of that maneuver or that attack that you're performing. And so I agree with you 100%. Invaluable. Definitely in my top. I mean, I hope to always roll a naturally speedy character, but if I don't, I'm spending the majority of my time in Ludus making sure that I get this all the way up.
Yep. And like you said, there's also a defensive component to reflexes. It's not near as much as, say, agility, but for every 4 points that you go through that scalar, you get 1 point to defense. And in the same way that footwork will get you 1 point for every 2 ranks.
Right on, right on. Okay. So that's essentially, nut by nut, bolt by bolt combat maneuvers. Overall feel of the importance of this skill set, what do you think?
That's absolutely necessary. So if you're ever going to do any sort of combat, you of course need it. And there's other utility, even for non-combatants. Just fallback can help you as a thief if
Hmm.
you're getting approached by constables, or it can help you if you're a tailor and you get jumped by somebody. You might want to have that fallback skill ready to help get you away. Missile awareness, the same thing. Just having some dodges as a non-com can be effective, from avoiding banditing.
Fair enough, fair enough. Or if you've got this like particularly hard stitch to do in tailoring, you've always got Battle Cry to help you with that next success roll.
I still personally think reflexes should affect, tailoring time as well. So I would love to see that.
Fair enough, fair enough. Okay, sounds good to me. Any gimmicks, any sort of internally fantastic things within this? Can you layer any of these dodges or attacks or maneuvers on top of each other? We talked about recovery a little bit.
I would say recovery is probably the top gimmick. I think that's what you're leading to. Absolutely, that's something that you can really use to time. That combined with backwards rolling rise. If you fail an attack and you know a sweep is coming, and now you wait for that backwards rolling rise bonus too. I mean, imagine having a plus 50 from recovery, plus 30 from backwards rolling rise. You have a plus 80 attack. I mean, that's pretty massive.
Yeah.
So.
All
Uh,
right. Absolutely. Now we know training is expensive. Training takes time. We know that from the wiki. Certainly, there are a lot of NPC trainers. Where you mentioned to me that this is absolutely necessary. What do you think is the availability of getting this skill taught to you in game from other players?
Other players is going to be very high. I mean, that's one thing you generally aren't going to have to waste money on it. I know they have the cheaper trader than Ludus these days, and that helps a bit to get the first few ranks. You don't want to bother, but you're going to find very quickly once you get past rank 10 or 20, it's getting very expensive. It's going to take a lot of time to go out and collect pearls or whatever it is to get money for this training. And since everybody's going to know the skill set, everybody's going to be able to teach you early on. So yeah, this is one of those things that pretty much most people aren't going to mind. If you just think out, hey, can I get some basic dodge lessons? You'll find them. Now, if you ask for something like rolling rise lessons, you'll find they're going to be a little bit more picky about those. So a lot of people do have them, but especially going past rank 100, a lot of people don't like to kind of give that away. They like to say, oh, well, I'm rank 200 to backwards rolling rise, and I want to ensure no one else is that high. So they
Hmm.
might be more stingy with that. But in general, you'll find someone to teach you, especially early on.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. Any parting wisdom about combat maneuvers?
Say I just want to reiterate the importance of, say, rolling dodge. That I think a lot of people underestimate it. I think that especially if you're going to be in say the Travent, it will save you a ton of the time. So don't forget about that rolling dodge.
Right on. Okay. Now I know that you kind of spoke to me about some spreadsheets and a lot of other information you have. Did you want us to kind of peek behind the veil with that? Did you have something to show us, or?
Sure, sure. And so I know this is really designed for, I guess, people kind of really more coming into the game or trying to get a basic idea of what they need to do first. But just to give you an idea of what some of the, I guess, the power trainers and the power players try to do in order to really figure out what they need to train next and why. I can kind of show that there's there, there's a document on the wiki site that actually shows kind of what dodges go to what attacks and so forth. And I can kind of show how I've elaborated on that to really help inform
Hmm. Hmm.
how I need to train. So if you want me to share my screen, I can do that.
Yeah, yeah, I'm ready for you.
Let me know if you can see my screen on the Zoom there.
Yep, I'm looking at your screen right here.
Excellent. All right, so let me go ahead and go over to the dodges and blocks page over here. So you'll notice this looks very similar to the page that's on the wiki. It's a little bit different. I've customized it a bit, whether it be highlighting, say, SWAT, always going to aim high for this attack for two-handed axes. So I've tried to kind of give myself a visual of how things aim, and I've aligned the different defenses to them. And this is very effective because in high-end PvP, you really need to know quickly, hey, if I'm going to go up against a clubber in my next gladiator match, I need to know which attacks are to be going up against, something he can't block, or say, hey, my slash is an easy move and it's going to be going up against an average defensive here. This is really how the high end PvP players are going to plan out their attacks. At the
Hmm.
same time, you can also plan out your defenses. So for this one, what I've done on the left is I've actually done some math for saying what is my defense against this specific move. So in a spreadsheet over here, I had my defenses for this character. Then going back over here, I've done some math for the layering. If you don't know, for the layering, if you have two levels of defense, you get 100% of your rank bonus for the first layer, and then you get 50% of your rank bonus for the second layer, and 33% of your bonus for a third layer if you have that layer.
So that
So you
would be
can do
like if I had knives and then I was wielding a shield and I had combat maneuvers, then that would be my three layers of defense in that situation.
correct. And from either one of those, if you kind of read the logic that I've done here, I'm saying take the maximum value out of those, and that is your first starting one. And then from there, find the second highest one, and that's the one that gets cut in half. And then from there, find the third highest one, and that's going to be the one that gets cut into a third. And then add those together, and you get your total rank bonus for that move. And what
Hmm.
this really helped me do when I was really big into PvP for gladiating, is I could scroll through and just go, okay, what are my big gaps? What are my big holes? And now I know that, okay, well, this is because I have a low block and an average move dodging that. So I know that I need to train up either my leg dodge or my low block in order to cover that hole.
Right on, right on. Okay, so this concludes sort of the most data mined section of the video. Your golden spreadsheet, and that almost actually brings us to an hour. So that was sort of a overview of combat maneuvers. Certainly, we talked about a lot. If you have any questions, oh my God, please put them in the comments in the section below. Join us on the Discord. There'll also be a link for that. Or please, post your questions on the forums. Essentially, we have all kinds of multiple avenues to make sure that um, we have all kinds of ability to answer the questions. Please reach out. And of course, more to come. I know that Craig and I are looking to do two-handed axes at the very least again together, and I'll be looking to partner up with a couple of people in the community for some other skills and combat sort of tips and tricks within the game. So thank you so much, Craig.
So thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And I look forward to the other videos.
All right, so long. Bye bye now.